What happens when the weakest wolf in the pack is rejected by the one destined to stand beside her? For Sarah Whitlock, life meant silence. It meant keeping her head down, her scent muted, her wolf buried so deep she sometimes forgot it existed. As the only Omega in the Silvercrest pack, she'd learned early that invisibility was survival. Her parents, both powerful betas, had taught her to blend into shadows, to never draw attention, to accept that her place was at the bottom of every hierarchy that mattered. But when Alpha Dante Ashford stood before the entire pack during the Harvest Moon ceremony and spoke the words that would shatter her world, everything changed. He didn't just reject their mate bond, he destroyed it. Publicly, brutally, with witnesses. And what happens next? No one was prepared for. Especially not the 10 massive wolves who'd been searching for her across 3 territories, guided by a prophecy older than the packlands themselves. The ceremony had been perfect. Too perfect. Sarah remembered standing at the edge of the gathering, the scent of roasted meat and pine smoke thick in the autumn air, watching couples affirm their bonds beneath the full moon's silver gaze. She'd felt it then. That pull, that impossible golden thread connecting her to the wolf standing at the center of it all. Dante Ashford, 28 years old, newly ascended alpha after his father's retirement. Tall, broad-shouldered, with eyes like molten amber, and a scent that made her wolf whimper with recognition. Forest loam, dying embers, ozone before a storm, and cold steel. The scent of power. The scent of home. The scent of the male who was about to ruin her. She'd felt the bond snap into place like a key turning in a lock she hadn't known existed. The world had narrowed to just him. Just that invisible thread humming between them, golden and warm, and absolutely certain. Her wolf had stirred for the first time in years, pressing against her consciousness with desperate hope. Mate, her wolf had whispered. Ours. Time stopped when his eyes found hers across the gathering. Recognition flashed in those amber depths. He'd felt it too. She saw it in the way his shoulders tensed, in the subtle flare of his nostrils as he caught her scent. Lavender and morning dew and wildflowers. The soft, gentle scent of an Omega. Nothing like the cinnamon iron blood sharpness of his chosen companion, Vivian Cross. Vivian, beautiful, ambitious, the daughter of the beta of the neighboring Nightshade pack, a political alliance wrapped in glossy black fur and cruel smiles. Sarah had known, even before Dante's expression shifted from recognition to disgust, that this wouldn't end well. Come forward, Dante had commanded, his alpha voice rolling across the gathered wolves like thunder. Every instinct screamed at her to run, but an alpha's command wasn't a request. Her legs moved before her mind caught up, carrying her through the parting crowd until she stood before him in the ceremonial circle, exposed under the moon's merciless light. Sarah Whitlock, her name in his mouth sounded like a curse. The moon goddess has made an error. Murmurs rippled through the pack. Her parents stood frozen near the elder's platform, her mother's face pale, her father's jaw tight. They knew. Somehow, they'd always known this moment would come. You cannot be my mate, Dante continued, his scent shifting to something sharp and dismissive. An Omega? A wolf so weak she can barely shift. You would make a mockery of this pack's strength. The words cut, but Sarah had heard worse. She'd endured worse. She could survive this. She just needed to stay quiet, to accept it, to disappear back into the shadows where she belonged. But then Vivian stepped forward, her scent smug with victory, and wrapped herself around Dante's arm like a serpent, claiming its prize. Tell her, Vivian purred. Make it official. Dante's eyes hardened. When he spoke, His voice carried the weight of alpha authority, binding and absolute. I, Dante Ashford, Alpha of the Silvercrest Pack, reject you, Sarah Whitlock, as my mate. I sever this bond before the moon goddess and this pack as witnesses. The pain was immediate, devastating. The golden thread between them turned to molten fire, burning through her chest like liquid silver. Sarah gasped, stumbling, her hands clutching at nothing as the bond tore itself apart inside her. It felt like her soul was being ripped in half, piece by piece, each strand of connection snapping with physical force. She hit the ground, her vision blurring. Somewhere, her wolf was howling, screaming, dying. I accept, she managed to choke out, because tradition demanded it, because refusing would only prolong the agony. The bond shattered completely. A wave of power washed over the gathering as the severance completed. Sharp, final, irreversible. Sarah felt something inside her break that had nothing to do with the mate bond. Something older. Something that had been holding her together for 22 years. Remove her, Dante ordered, his scent already shifting to match Vivienne's, their new bond beginning to form. She's no longer welcome at pack ceremonies. She is banished, the pack's elder finished, her ancient voice carrying across the stunned silence. Rejected mates must leave the territory. It is law. No. The word came from Sarah's father, Beta Marcus Whitlock, but it was weak, half-hearted. Surely we can. The law is clear, another elder interjected. She has until dawn to leave Silvercrest lands. Sarah tried to stand, failed. 2 guards gripped her arms, hauling her upright. She caught a glimpse of her mother's face. Not sympathy, not love, but fear. Raw, consuming fear that made no sense. They dragged her through the crowd, past wolves who'd known her since childhood, past pack members who turned away rather than meet her eyes. The scent of their discomfort hung in the air like smoke, embarrassment, relief that it wasn't them, and underneath it all, a strange current of expectation, as if they'd been waiting for this. They dumped her at the edge of the territory, right where pack lands met the wild forest beyond. "Don't come back," one guard said, not unkindly. "Alpha's orders. You cross this line again. It's death." Then they were gone, and Sarah was alone. She tried to reach her parents one last time, stumbling back toward her childhood home on legs that barely worked. But her mother met her at the door, her scent heavy with guilt and terror and something else. Resignation. "You can't stay," her mother whispered. "It's better this way." "Safer." "Safer?" Sarah's voice cracked. "I'll die out there. It's October. The first snow is coming. I can't shift properly. I can't hunt. I can't—" "You're stronger than you know." Her father appeared behind her mother, his expression carved from stone. "You always have been. We did what we had to do. Maybe now—" He stopped himself. "Go, Sarah. Go far from here. And don't look back." The door closed in her face. Sarah stood there for a long moment, waiting for it to open again, for this to be some cruel test of her resilience. But the house remained dark, silent, locked against her. She turned toward the wilderness. She made a mistake that night. She didn't just walk into the forest. She walked into her death. The first snow came 3 hours later. Sarah had managed perhaps 5 miles from packlands when the temperature dropped and the sky opened. What started as gentle flakes became a blizzard within minutes, the wind howling through the trees like a living thing, hungry and vicious. Her thin jacket, all she'd been wearing at the ceremony, was useless. Her boots, meant for ceremony, not survival, were already soaked through. And her wolf, that part of her that should have risen to protect her, remained locked away. barely a whisper in the back of her mind. The bond severance had drained her completely. She stumbled through the darkness, her hands numb, her lips blue, searching desperately for shelter. The forest was unfamiliar here, outside pack boundaries, and every tree looked the same through the curtain of snow. Then, impossibly, she saw it, the dark silhouette of a structure through the whiteout. A barn. Old, half-collapsed, but solid enough to block the wind. Sarah pushed through the broken door and collapsed onto the hay-strewn floor. Her whole body was shaking, violent tremors that she couldn't control. She tried to curl into herself, tried to preserve what little warmth remained, but it was leaking out of her faster than she could contain it. This is it, she thought with crystalline clarity. This is how I die. Not in battle, not with honor. Alone in an abandoned barn, rejected and frozen and so very tired. Her wolf stirred weakly, a final flicker of defiance before the end. "I'm sorry," Sarah told her. "I'm so sorry I wasn't strong enough." Consciousness began to slip away. Darkness creeping in from the edges, architected narrative structure for dramatic rescue sequence. I need to continue with Act 2, the rescue by the 10 massive wolves. This should be around 1 to 900 words and include the specific beats requested. Awakening surrounded by wolves, counting them, realizing they protected her, the alpha leader revealing himself, and, "We've been waiting for you." I'm at roughly 1,500 words already for Act 1, which is good. I need to keep the pacing strong and maintain the cinematic, emotionally punchy style. The last thing she remembered was the cold, the absolute, consuming cold that felt like it was turning her bones to ice. And then, warmth. Sarah woke to heat, impossible, blessed heat that pressed against her from all sides. She was surrounded by something soft and alive, breathing in synchronized rhythm. Her face was buried in fur, thick, luxurious fur that smelled like aged oak and winter snow and pine trees after a storm. She blinked her eyes open slowly, her vision adjusting to the dim pre-dawn light filtering through the barn's broken roof. Then she saw them. Wolves. Massive wolves, their bodies curled around her in a protective circle, sharing their body heat. But these weren't normal pack wolves. They were enormous, each one easily twice the size of the largest alpha she'd ever seen. Their fur ranged from silver white to charcoal black, and even in sleep, they radiated power that made the air feel heavy. Sarah's breath caught. She started counting, her mind struggling to process what she was seeing. 1, 2, 3. The silver-white wolf closest to her, its muzzle resting near her shoulder. 4, 5, 6. 3 charcoal dark wolves forming the outer perimeter. 7, 8, 9. Wolves with fur in shades of gray and brown, their bodies massive enough to block the wind entirely. And 10. The 10th wolf wasn't sleeping. It sat just beyond the circle, watching her with eyes that seemed to capture the dawn itself. Pale gold, ancient, and utterly aware. This wolf was the largest, its fur a deep, storm gray that seemed to shimmer in the low light. Scars marked its massive shoulders, old wounds from battles that should have killed it. The scent radiating from this wolf made her own wolf suddenly surge forward with startling intensity. Aged oak, winter snow, pine, and storm. But there was something else beneath it. Authority. Command. The scent of a king. Sarah sat up slowly, and the wolves began to wake. One by one, they lifted their heads. Their eyes, all in varying shades of gold and amber, fixing on her with an intensity that should have terrified her. But she wasn't afraid. She should have been. 10 massive unknown wolves, each capable of tearing her apart without effort. But the scent in the air wasn't aggression. It was reverence, protection, recognition. "You saved me," Sarah whispered, her voice hoarse from the cold. The largest wolf, the leader, rose to his feet. Standing, he was taller at the shoulder than she was sitting. Power rolled off him in waves, but it felt different from Dante's dominant force. This was older, deeper, absolute. The wolf stepped forward, and Sarah found herself frozen as he lowered his massive head until his muzzle was inches from her face. She felt the warmth of his breath, caught the full force of his scent, that oak and snow and storm, and something in her chest tightened. Not a mate bond. Something else. Something just as powerful. The wolf's eyes held hers, and in them she saw intelligence that went beyond animal instinct. She saw purpose. She saw answers to questions she hadn't known to ask. Then, between one breath and the next, he shifted. The transformation was unlike anything Sarah had ever witnessed. No pain, no cracking of bones, just a fluid melting of one form into another. The fur receded, the massive frame compacted and reformed, and within seconds, a man stood before her. He was perhaps 35, maybe older. It was hard to tell with wolves of real power. Tall, with broad shoulders marked by the same scars she'd seen on his wolf form. His hair was dark with silver threads, his jawline sharp, his face carved from granite and determination. He wore simple clothing, dark pants, a loose shirt, but he carried himself like royalty. And that scent, that impossible, overwhelming scent of oak and snow and storm that made her wolf keen with longing. "Sarah Whitlock," he said, his voice deep and resonant, carrying a slight accent she couldn't place. "We've been waiting for you." The other 9 wolves shifted as well, forming a semicircle around her. Each of them was imposing in their human forms, warriors, everyone, their bodies marked with scars and hard muscle. But their eyes held the same reverence their wolves had shown. "Who are you?" Sarah managed, though her voice shook. The leader crouched before her, bringing himself to her eye level despite his size. "I am Cain Stormbringer, Lycan King of the Northern Territories. And these," he gestured to the 9 warriors behind him, "are the Shadow Guard, the Unchained. We serve no pack, answer to no council. We serve only the prophecy. We serve only you." "I don't understand." Sarah's hands trembled, and not from the cold anymore. "I'm nobody. I'm just an Omega. I can't even shift properly. You are everything," Cain interrupted gently. His hand reached out, hovering near her face but not quite touching. "And you've been lied to your entire life." One of the other guards stepped forward, a woman with short dark hair and eyes like polished steel. Her scent was sharp and clean, like winter air. "The prophecy spoke of you, matriarch. When the weakest is cast out, when the moon witnesses betrayal, when death's door opens wide, the matriarch will rise. She will be bound, but breaking. She will be lost, but found. She will come when the packs forget the old ways, when power corrupts the bloodlines, when the balance tips toward darkness." "That's not me," Sarah protested. "That can't be me." "Your parents knew," another guard said, a younger male with auburn hair and a jagged scar across his throat. His scent was earthy, like fresh soil after rain. "They bound your power when you were an infant. They thought they were protecting you. They thought, if you never became what you were meant to be, the prophecy couldn't unfold. They were wrong." Cain's expression darkened. "The binding was strong. Ancient magic. Woven by a witch, they paid in blood and secrets. It suppressed your wolf, dampened your power, made you appear as the weakest when you are, in truth, the strongest." But bindings like that have a weakness. What weakness? Sarah asked, though dread was already pooling in her stomach. Rejection, Kane said softly. The severance of a mate bond creates a surge of power in the wolf. Your parents couldn't have predicted it. They bound you before you were old enough for a mate. But when that bond snapped, when all that energy flooded through you, it shattered the binding, Sarah finished, understanding blooming like a terrible flower. The bond breaking broke their spell. Yes. Kane's eyes held sympathy and something fiercer, anticipation. And now, Sarah Whitlock, your true wolf is waking. We felt it last night, that surge of power. It called to us across the territories like a beacon. We ran all night to reach you before the cold claimed what we've waited centuries to find. Sarah looked down at her hands. They were still trembling, but now she felt it. That stirring inside her, that presence that had always been so quiet, so buried. Her wolf was moving, stretching, unfurling like a flower toward sunlight. And she was angry. They bound us, her wolf snarled, her voice clear for the first time in Sarah's life. They caged us, silenced us, made us weak when we were born to lead. I can hear her, Sarah whispered, tears streaming down her face. I can actually hear my wolf. You'll do more than hear her, Kane promised. His hand finally touched her cheek, gentle despite his obvious strength. We're going to teach you everything they stole from you. How to shift, how to fight, how to command. How to become what you were always meant to be. Why? The question burst from Sarah. Why do you care? You don't know me. I'm nothing to you. The shadow guard exchanged glances, and then the female warrior with steel-gray eyes spoke again. Because we are bound by oath to serve the matriarch, because the packs have fallen into corruption and cruelty, because someone needs to restore balance, and because the prophecy promised us that when you rose, a new age would begin. An age where might doesn't equal right, another guard added, an older male with silver threaded through his black hair. Where omegas aren't treated as disposable, where the old ways are remembered. Kane stood, offering his hand. But first you need to survive. You need to become. The transformation won't be easy. The magic that bound you left scars. Your first true shift will be intense. Sarah stared at his outstretched hand. Behind him, 9 warriors watched her with expectation, written in every line of their bodies. These wolves, these powerful, scarred, legendary wolves, had run through a blizzard to save her. They spoke of prophecies and power, and a future she couldn't begin to imagine. 24 hours ago, she'd been invisible, forgotten, weak. Now, they were calling her matriarch. Sarah took Kane's hand and let him pull her to her feet. Her wolf stirred within, power beginning to build like pressure behind a dam. Teach me, she said, and her voice didn't shake this time. Teach me everything. Kane's smile was fierce and proud. It would be our honor. The barn was abandoned no longer. It became a sanctuary, a proving ground. The place where Sarah Whitlock would die and something far greater would be born. But she didn't know that yet. She didn't know that the prophecy wasn't just about her rising. It was about the entire werewolf world being remade. The pain started 3 days later. Kane had moved them to a more secure location, a series of caves deep in unclaimed territory, far from any pack's borders. The Shadow Guard had set up a camp with practiced efficiency, fire for warmth, fresh game for food, and a wide clearing for training. For 3 days, Sarah had learned the basics, how to access her wolf consciously instead of waiting for it to surface, how to sense the energy that flowed through all shifters, how to use her nose the way she was meant to, not just to scent things, but to read emotion, intention, power. The scent of the Shadow Guard had become familiar. Cain's oak snowstorm pine, Lyra's winter steel, Declan's earth rain, Ronan's smoke leather, Kira's honey iron, Marcus's cedar frost, Finn's riverstone, Theron's sage shadow, Ilara's lavender twilight, Vesper's amber silk. 10 warriors, each one deadly, each one treating her like she was precious. And then, on the third night, the binding's final thread snapped. Sarah woke screaming. Power flooded through her body like lightning through water, surging along every nerve, burning through every cell. The magic that had held her wolf captive for 22 years was dissolving. And as it went, it took pieces of her with it. Or rather, it revealed pieces that had always been there, hidden beneath layers of artificial weakness. "Cain!" Lyra's shout echoed through the caves. Sarah was dimly aware of being carried to the clearing, of being laid on cool grass under open sky. The Shadow Guard surrounded her, their scents mixing in the air. Concern, determination, awe. "Let it happen," Cain commanded, his voice cutting through her pain. "Don't fight it, Sarah. Your wolf wants to be free. Let her out." "It hurts," Sarah gasped, her back arching as another wave of power crashed through her. "I know." Cain's hand found hers, his grip anchoring her. "But this pain is breaking, not breaking down. This is you becoming whole." Her wolf wasn't just stirring now. She was raging, clawing, demanding release after years of imprisonment. "Let me out," her wolf roared, and Sarah, finally, surrendered. The shift began. It wasn't like the painful, incomplete transformations she'd attempted before. This was fluid, powerful. Her bones didn't snap. They flowed, restructuring themselves with liquid grace. Her muscles didn't tear. They expanded, growing denser, stronger. Her senses didn't just sharpen. They exploded into full awareness. She could smell everything. The pine sap on the trees, the mineral tang of the stream half a mile away, the individual scents of each guard member, the deer moving through the forest 3 miles north. She could hear everything, the whisper of wind through needles, the heartbeat of a rabbit in its burrow, the rustle of an owl's wings, the breathing of her protectors. She could feel everything, the earth beneath her changing form, the cool night air, the surge of pure energy building inside her, like a star going nova. Fur emerged across her skin, not the patchy, uncertain growth she'd managed before, but a thick, luxurious coat that seemed to glow in the moonlight, white as fresh snow, but threaded with silver that caught the light like woven starlight. Her body expanded, and expanded, and expanded. When the transformation completed, Sarah stood on 4 legs and looked down at wolves who should have dwarfed her. She was massive, larger than Cain in his wolf form, larger than any alpha she'd ever seen. She was a creature of myth made flesh, white and silver, and power made manifest. Her eyes, she somehow knew, were no longer the soft brown of her human form. They burned violet, lit from within by the magic that now flowed freely through her veins. The first howl erupted from her throat without conscious thought, a sound that shook the trees, that rippled across the clearing like a physical force, that declared to every wolf within 100 miles that something ancient had awakened. The Shadow Guard shifted instantly, dropping to their bellies in submission, their muzzles pressed to the earth. All except Cain. He shifted and stood before her in his massive wolf form, and even then, she was larger. His gold eyes met her violet ones, and she saw tears glittering there. Joy, relief, vindication. She is the matriarch, he sent to the others, through the mental link all wolves shared. The prophecy is fulfilled. Sarah looked at her paws, massive, each one larger than a dinner plate. She felt the energy coursing through her, limitless and wild, and finally, Finally free, her wolf was laughing, crying, howling with triumph. "We are whole," her wolf sang. "We are mighty. We are everything they tried to bury." When Sarah looked up at the moon, she swore she saw it shine brighter, as if the moon goddess herself was smiling. In that moment, Sarah understood what her parents had feared, what Dante had been too blind to see, what the prophecy had always known. She wasn't weak. She had never been weak. She was a queen. The training began in earnest after that night. Days turned to weeks, and autumn bled into early winter. The Shadow Guard taught her everything: how to control her shifts, how to hunt properly, how to fight with both strategy and instinct. But they also helped her discover abilities that went beyond physical strength. Sarah learned she could sense emotions through scent with unprecedented accuracy. When Lyra was troubled but hiding it, Sarah could smell the worry beneath her winter steel scent, like bitter herbs in honey. When Finn was in pain from an old injury, she could detect it in the subtle shift of his riverstone essence, and once she detected it, she found she could ease it. Her healing abilities manifested gradually. A touch here, a focused intention there. The first time she laid her hand on Marcus's shoulder and drew out the chronic ache from a decades-old battle wound, the grizzled warrior had wept. "No one in living memory has had this gift," Kane told her, watching with those ancient gold eyes. The power to heal through touch, through intention. This is what makes a matriarch different from an alpha. Alphas rule through strength. Matriarchs lead through connection. But Sarah also learned she could command. When she spoke with her alpha voice, a deeper, more resonant version of what Dante had used, wolves had no choice but to obey. It was absolute, undeniable. The first time she'd used it accidentally during a sparring session with Theron, he'd frozen mid-attack, his wolf surrendering instantly. "That's terrifying," Sarah had said, horrified at her own power. "That's necessary," Kane had corrected. "When we face your former pack, and we will, you'll need every advantage." The Shadow Guard became her family, in ways her blood relatives never had. She learned their stories, their scars, their hopes. Lyra had been a Beta's daughter, who'd watched her pack slaughter Omegas during a famine. She'd run rather than participate. Found Kane. Sworn herself to the prophecy. Declan had lost his mate to a cruel alpha's whim. He'd killed that alpha and been declared rogue. Kane had found him before other packs hunted him down. Ronan had been born to a pack that believed only the strong deserved to survive. He'd protected weaker pack members and been cast out. The prophecy had given him purpose. Each of them had been broken by pack cruelty. Each of them had found hope in the promise of something better. Each of them looked at Sarah like she was that promise made flesh. "You're changing too," Kira observed one evening as they sat by the fire. Her honey iron scent was warm in the cold air. "You stand taller. Your scent is stronger, lavender still, but with power underneath now. Morning dew and wildflowers wrapped in lightning and moonlight." Sarah flexed her hand, watching the firelight dance across her skin. In her human form, she looked the same, maybe a bit healthier, better fed, less haunted. But she felt completely different. She felt solid, real, like she'd spent 22 years as a ghost and was finally gaining substance. "I'm not the girl who was rejected," Sarah said quietly. "I don't think I can ever be her again." "Good," Kane said from where he sat sharpening a blade. "That girl was a lie they forced you to believe. This," he gestured at her, "this is truth." But as the weeks passed and Sarah's power grew, so did the certainty that a reckoning was coming. Fate, it seemed, had a sense of irony. The scout from Silvercrest found their camp on a gray December morning, 6 weeks after Sarah's rejection. He was young, barely 19, and his scent betrayed his terror when he realized what he'd stumbled upon. 10 massive wolves, and at their center, a white wolf with violet eyes, who radiated power that made his knees buckle. "Please," the scout gasped, his wolf forcing him into submission. "I didn't mean, I was just tracking." "Who sent you?" Sarah asked. Her voice calm but laced with command. The scout had no choice but to answer. "Alpha Dante. We've been patrolling wider territories, looking for rogues who've been talking about a prophecy, about a white wolf." Of course. Word had spread. Other wolves had seen her transformation, had felt that surge of power. Rumors had a way of traveling fast in the supernatural world. "Go back to your alpha," Sarah commanded, and power thrummed through her words. "Tell him Sarah Whitlock is alive. Tell him she's coming, and tell him to prepare for judgment." The scout ran like death itself was chasing him. "They'll bring an army," Lyra said, her expression grim. "Let them," Sarah replied. Her wolf was calm, certain, eager. It's time they learned what they threw away. The Shadow Guard prepared for war. Silvercrest Pack mobilized within a day. 25 wolves, far more than necessary for a mere rogue encounter, crossed into unclaimed territory, with Dante at their head. Sarah watched them approach from a ridge overlooking the valley where she'd chosen to make her stand. Kane stood beside her in wolf form, his storm-gray presence solid and reassuring. The other 9 guards flanked them, forming a perfect line of power. Through her enhanced senses, Sarah could smell the approaching wolves. Most were afraid. Good. But Dante's scent was arrogant, dismissive. He still didn't understand. And beside him, dripping cinnamon iron blood into the morning air, was Vivian. 25 against 10, Declan murmured. "I like those odds." 25 against 11, Sarah corrected. "I'm not sitting this one out." Kane huffed in amusement. "More like 25 against 1. The rest of us are just here for moral support." When Dante's force reached the valley floor, they spread out in attack formation. The Alpha himself stepped forward, his amber eyes scanning the ridge until they landed on the massive white wolf standing at its center. His scent shifted. Shock, disbelief, and beneath it all, the first thread of fear. "Sarah?" His voice carried across the distance. "That can't be. You're an Omega. You can't shift like that. You can't." "You made a mistake," Sarah called down, her human voice emerging from her wolf throat with unnatural clarity. Another gift of her true nature. "You didn't just reject your mate, Dante Ashford. You rejected the matriarch. And now you're going to learn what that means." Vivian snarled, her scent spiking with rage. "She's lying." "Using witch magic to make herself look powerful. I'll tear out her throat and prove it." The beautiful female shifted mid-sentence, her wolf, a glossy black creature that had once seemed impressive, charging up the ridge with her fangs bared. She made it halfway before Sarah moved. The speed alone was devastating. One moment Sarah was standing still. The next, she was down the ridge and on Vivian, with a force that sent both wolves tumbling. They rolled once, twice, and when they separated, Vivian was on her back, whimpering, with Sarah's massive paw pressed against her throat. "Submit," Sarah commanded, pouring power into the word. Vivian's wolf had no choice. Her belly exposed, her throat vulnerable, she submitted instantly, a high, keening whine of complete surrender. Sarah stepped back, letting Vivian scramble away. Humiliated and defeated in front of her new pack. "Anyone else?" Sarah asked the stunned warriors. That's when the Shadow Guard revealed their true forms. As one, they shifted, and the change that came over them was more dramatic than even Sarah's transformation. They didn't become merely large wolves. They became dire wolves, ancient protectors, each one towering even in their wolf forms, their eyes glowing with colors that had no place in nature: silver, crimson, emerald, gold. Their fur seemed to shift and move like smoke, like shadow, like living myth. Theron's wolf was charcoal, with silver eyes that burned like starlight. Ilara's was pale as bone, with eyes like twilight. Vesper's shimmered between amber and gold, like liquid honey. Together, they formed a wall of supernatural power that made Dante's entire force step back in instinctive terror. "These are the Unchained," Sarah announced, "the Shadow Guard, bound by prophecy to protect the matriarch. And you, Alpha Dante Ashford, thought you could send 25 ordinary wolves to challenge us." Dante's scent had gone sour with fear, but pride kept him from fleeing. "What do you want?" "I want you to kneel," Sarah said softly. "I want every wolf here to acknowledge what you destroyed. And then I want you to help me remake the pack system into something better than this broken, cruel hierarchy. And if I refuse?" Cain's dire wolf form stalked forward, and the temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. Power radiated from him in waves, not the brutal dominance of an alpha, but the ancient authority of a Lycan king. His storm gray fur rippled with barely contained lightning. "You won't refuse," Cain said, his voice layered with centuries of command. "Because the alternative is that we dismantle Silvercrest Pack entirely and rebuild it with wolves who understand that strength without compassion is just brutality in fancy clothes." For a long moment, Dante stared up at them, at the massive white wolf who had once been the weak Omega he'd rejected, at the legendary guards who surrounded her, at the prophecy made manifest. Then, slowly, his wolf's legs buckled. He sank to the ground, his muzzle pressing into the earth in full submission. "Mercy," he whispered. "I beg mercy." Behind him, one by one, every member of his war party submitted. Even Vivienne, her pride shattered, pressed her belly to the frozen ground. Sarah looked at them, these wolves who had watched her be cast out, who had done nothing to stop it, who had believed she was weak and worthless. She could destroy them. She had that power now. She could tear apart their pack structure, could exile them all, could make them feel the same pain and terror they'd allowed her to experience. But she was not Dante. She was the matriarch. "Rise," Sarah commanded, "all of you." They stood, confused, wary. "Here is my judgment," Sarah said, her voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. "Silvercrest Pack will undergo reform. Omega wolves will be protected, not degraded. Mates chosen for political gain will be forbidden. Let the moon goddess decide, not ambition. Rejected wolves will be given sanctuary, not exile." And Dante, the Alpha, met her violet eyes. His own amber gaze filled with regret that came far too late. "You will remain Alpha," Sarah continued, and gasps rippled through both groups. "Because I'm not interested in ruling through punishment. I'm interested in change. You will implement these new laws. You will protect the weak instead of exploiting them. And if you fail, if even one Omega in your territory suffers the way I did, I will return. And next time, my mercy won't extend to second chances." She turned to address the entire assembly. "I am Sarah Whitlock, but you will know me as the Matriarch Reborn. This territory, this unclaimed land, is now my domain. Any wolf fleeing cruelty, any Omega seeking protection, any rejected mate cast out to die, can find sanctuary here. Tell every pack from here to the western coast, the old ways are returning. And those who cling to corruption will be swept away when the tide turns." Cain stepped forward, his dire wolf form still towering and terrible. "I am Cain Stormbringer, Lycan King of the Northern Territories. I stand with the Matriarch, My strength is her strength. My shadow guard is her sword. And any who doubt this new order will find themselves answering to all of us." The scent of fear radiating from Dante's wolves was almost overwhelming now. They'd come expecting to crush a rogue. They were leaving, having witnessed the rise of a new power structure. "Go," Sarah commanded. "Spread the word. The matriarch has returned." And so Sarah Whitlock's journey began. The weak Omega became the White Queen. The rejected mate became the matriarch reborn. The girl bound by fear became the woman who would reshape the werewolf world. The Shadow Guard stood with her as Silvercrest Pack retreated, their silhouettes powerful against the winter sky. Cain shifted back to human form and approached Sarah, who'd also returned to her human shape. In the freezing air, steam rose from their skin, the heat of their power keeping the cold at bay. "You showed mercy," Cain observed. "Some would call that weakness." "Some would be wrong," Sarah replied. "Real strength isn't about crushing everyone beneath you. It's about lifting others up. My parents taught me that by doing the opposite." "Speaking of your parents," Sarah's expression hardened. "They're next. They bound my power. They let me suffer. They owe me answers, even if I can never forgive them." Lyra approached, her winter steel scent carrying approval. "The scouts report 3 more Omegas fleeing from packs in the Western Territories. They heard about you. They're coming here seeking protection." "Then we build," Sarah said firmly. "Shelters, a real sanctuary, a place where the hierarchy doesn't crush those deemed weak. We show them what a pack can be when it's built on protection instead of domination." Kira grinned, her honey iron scent brightening with excitement. "A revolution." "A evolution," Sarah corrected. "We're not destroying the pack system. We're healing it, reminding wolves what we were always meant to be, protectors, not predators." As the sun climbed higher, the Shadow Guard began making plans. New arrivals would need housing, training, safety. They would need to learn, as Sarah had, that weakness was a lie, often told by those who feared what others could become. Cain caught Sarah's hand as the others dispersed to begin preparations. "There's one more thing the prophecy mentioned. The matriarch wouldn't rise alone. She would have a chosen mate, not fated by the moon goddess, but chosen by free will." Sarah looked up at him. This scarred, powerful male who'd run through a blizzard to save her, who'd taught her to embrace her strength, whose scent of oak and snow and storm had become home. "I know," she said softly. "I've known since that first morning in the barn. The bond I felt wasn't fate. It was choice. My choice." "And what do you choose?" Cain asked, though his gold eyes already knew the answer. "I choose the king who chose me first," Sarah said, and she felt the bond snap into place. Not the golden thread of mate bonds, but something silver and strong and unbreakable. "I choose strength that protects. I choose power that heals. I choose you, Cain Stormbringer." When they kissed, the Shadow Guard howled their approval, and the forest itself seemed to celebrate. But even in that moment of joy, Sarah felt it, a whisper of darkness on the wind. The prophecy had spoken of her rising. It had mentioned the blood moon. It had warned of an ancient evil that would wake when the matriarch did. The threat was coming. Whatever had slept while the packs fell into corruption was stirring now, drawn by her power like moths to flame. But Sarah was no longer afraid. She had her pack. She had her guard. She had her mate. And she had a power that had been bound for 22 years, now unleashed and burning bright. Let the darkness come. The matriarch was ready. And so Sarah Whitlock's journey from rejected Omega to legendary matriarch was just beginning. She learned that weakness is often just hidden strength waiting to be discovered. She learned that true power comes from protecting others, not dominating them. She learned that family isn't always blood. Sometimes it's the warriors who run through blizzards to save you, the guards who teach you to be strong, the king who sees your worth when you can't. Her story would become legend, told around pack fires, whispered in training grounds, sung by Omegas who finally had hope. The story of the white wolf with violet eyes who rose from rejection to rule with compassion, who turned cruelty into kindness, who proved that mercy and strength could coexist. What did you think of Sarah's transformation? Could you see yourself in her journey? Have you ever felt underestimated, only to prove everyone wrong? Drop a comment below and let me know what resonated with you. If you loved this story, smash that like button and share it with someone who needs to hear that their perceived weakness might just be their greatest strength waiting to emerge. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the next chapter. Because this story isn't over. The blood moon is rising, ancient enemies are waking, and Sarah Whitlock, the matriarch reborn, is about to discover that her battle to reform the packs was just the beginning. What challenges await her? What darkness stirs in the shadows? And can even the matriarch stand against what's coming? Thank you for listening to this journey with me. We'll see you in the next chapter, where the real war begins. Until then, remember, you are stronger than you know. And sometimes, the greatest gift is the one that's hidden deepest. See you next time.